We continue now at the top of Daf Vavam and Beis Meseches Avodah Zara. This is Avodah Zara Daf 6b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara asked, what's the reason we don't do business with the non-Jews 3 days before their holiday? Is it in order so that they don't make a profit and they don't give thanks to their Avodah Zara on the holiday? Or is it that an idea of Lifnei Iver, that we don't want to provide for them an animal, that they're going to sacrifice that animal to the Avodah Zara? And the Gemara in the previous Amud asked, what's the difference between the two approaches? And the Gemara suggested, well, if the non-Jew already has an animal, so it wouldn't be Lifnei Iver, because the non-Jew already has an animal to sacrifice to his Avodah Zara. But the Gemara says, 1 second, is that really true that that's not Lifnei Iver? But we have a Bryce over here. Rabbi Nosson says, Minayin shelo yoshid adam kos shel yayin lenazir v'yever min hachai lifnei Noach. From where do we know that a person shouldn't pass a cup of wine to a nazir? Or let's say Ever min hachai to b'nei Noach. Ever min hachai is aser to b'nei Noach. How do you know that's not allowed? Talmud lomer v'lifnei Iver lo sitin michshel. It says again lifnei Iver. V'hacha, but over here dechi lo yahavin anlei. Even if we don't give it to them, but still shakli iu. Still he's going to be able to take it. He could just take the cup of wine, or he could just take the Ever min hachai. And yet we're saying there is a violation, there is a transgression of lifnei iver lo sitin michshel. So even if the non-Jew already has an animal, wouldn't it be lifnei iver to provide another animal to the non-Jew that he could sacrifice to his Avodah Zara? And the Gemara says, no, you're misunderstanding that brisa. And what's the case in the brisa? Dekai betray ivrei nahara, that they're on two different sides of the river, and he needs the Jew to pass it to him, or else he won't be able to get it. The Gemara even says, dekonami, you can infer this from the language of the brisa. To katani lo yoshid, it says that he shouldn't pass it across. V'lo katani lo yitin, it doesn't simply say that he shouldn't give it to him. Shema amino, and so the Gemara says, you see from that again, that's talking about trei ivrei denara, and so there really is a nafkamina. Again, if the non-Jew already has an animal, it's not going to be lifnei iver. And the Gemara continues, Iboilu, they had the following question. Nasa v'nasan mai, what if the Jew did do business with the non-Jew right before the holiday? Is he allowed to get benefit or not? Rashi explains, Nasa v'nasan lifnei eidei animon, he did business before their holiday with them. Mahu b'hanas, so let's say whatever he got, is he allowed to derive benefit from that? Mai, again, what's the halacha over there? Can he get benefit? That's a machlokas amoraim. Rabbi Yochanan amar nasa v'nasan aser. Rabbi Yochanan says that if he did business, so whatever profit, whatever he gained is going to be forbidden. Reish Lakish amar nasa v'nasan mutter. Reish Lakish says if he did the business, so after the fact, it's still going to be mutter. And the Gemara continues, Eisver Rabbi Yochanan l'Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan asked Reish Lakish from the following brisa, Eidein shalov de kochavim nasa v'nasan asurin. It says that again, by the holiday of the non-Jew, if he did business, so it's going to be asur. So apparently it's like Rabbi Yochanan said, that it is asur. The Gemara says, my lav, is it not lifnei eidehen? Doesn't it mean, again, before the holiday? And the Gemara says, no, that's not even what the brisa is talking about. The Gemara says, lo, no, eidehen dafka. We're talking actually on the holiday specifically. That's where we're saying that it is forbidden. And the Gemara continues, Ika Diamri, there are those that have another version of the above, Eisvei Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Rabbi Yochanan, it's the reverse. Reish Lakish is asking on Rabbi Yochanan from the Brisa, because it says, Eidein Shalov de Kochavim Nasa v'Nasan Aser, it says on the holiday of the Ovdei Kochavim, if you do business, it's Aser. So Eidein in, Lifnei Eidein lo, that implies that it's only on the holiday, but before the holiday, it actually would not be Aser. And the Gemara says, Tana idi v'idi eidein karile. It could be no, the Tana is calling both before and the actual holiday are both referred to as eidein, and so therefore it's not necessarily a proof to Reish Lakish. And the Gemara continues, Tanya kavasi de Reish Lakish. We have a brisa that supports Reish Lakish. Kishamru asr lases v'lases imam. When they said that it's forbidden to do business with them, lo asru ela bedavar hamiskayim. That's only asr, something that's going to be maintained, something that's not going to go bad. Aval bedavar sheino miskayim lo. But if it's something that's not going to be permanent, so to speak, then it would not be forbidden. Rashi explains, Lo asru ela bedavar hamiskayim ad yomei day. And the point over there is you do business with them, and whatever it is that you're giving to them will last until the holiday. He'll see it now on the day, he'll see it in front of him on the day of the holiday, and he'll think his Avodah Zara. Let's say something that won't last, can go in yerek, like a vegetable. It's not going to be around anymore by the time of the holiday, or similar to that, mutter, so then it actually would be mutter. So again, that's what the Bryce is saying over here. It's only asr davar hamiskayim, aval bedavar sheinu miskayim lo. And the Bryce continues, va'afilu bedavar hamiskayim, even by a davar hamiskayim, nasa v'nasan mutter. But if you did the business, so after the fact, it's going to be mutter, and that supports Reish Lakish. And the Gemara continues, Tani Rev Zavid bidvei Rabbi Oshia. Rev Zavid taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Oshia, davar shein miskayim mochrin lahem. You can sell them something that won't last. Aval ein lochin mehem, but you can't buy from them something that won't last, because then they're going to be receiving the money. And the Gemara continues, Ahumi na, there was a certain heretic, the Shadr le dinara kesranol Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya biomedo. He sent a Caesarean dinar to Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya. Shmiyah on the day of his holiday. Have Yosef Reish Lakish Kame, and Reish Lakish was sitting in front of him, and Amar, so he said, Hechi Avid, what should I do? Ashkele, if I take the money, so Azalamoda, he's going to go think his Avodah Zara. Lo Ashkele, if I don't take it, Havale Eva, that's going to cause hatred between us. Amar le Reish Lakish said to him, Tolu Zroko so lebor b'fanav, take it and throw it in a pit in front of him. Amar, he said, Kol shekain Havale Eva, that's for sure going to cause hatred. And the Gemara says, no, Kila'achar Yad hu dukamina. I meant to say that just do it Kila'achar Yad, as if it was an accident that you did it, not that you did it on purpose. That's how you should deal with this situation. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Lahashilon v'lishol mehen, also 3 days before their holidays, you can't lend to them and you can't borrow from them. And the Gemara says, Bishlama lahashilon, I understand to lend them, the kamar v'chlu, that's something that's a gain for them, it's a profit for them. Again, lahashilon means you're giving them a specific item and then they're going to give back the item. Avolishol mehen, but let's say to borrow an item from them, miyute kamem maidlu, so you're really taking away from them. So why is that something that they're going to thank their Avodah Zara for? And the Gemara says, Amar Abai says, Gezeru lishol mehen atu lahashilon. It's just a decree. We don't let you borrow because then you might come to lend. Rava says, Kula mishum da'azulu modehu. No, it's not true. That he will go and thank his Avodah Zara, because even in a situation where he's the one lending to you, he thanks his Avodah Zara that he's in the position that he's able to lend to you, and that you're in the position that you need to borrow from him. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Lahalvosam u'lalavos mehen, also when it comes to lending or borrowing money, that's also prohibited 3 days before their holiday. And the Gemara says, Bishlam lahalvosam, I understand to lend them money again, mishum de kamar v'chlu, that's a gain for them. Ela lalavos mehen, but to borrow money from them, amai, why is that prohibited? Amar Abai says, Gezeru lalavos mehen atu lahalvosam. Again, it's a gezeru to borrow from them because of the fact that you might come to lend money to them. Rava says again, Kula mishum da'azal modu. It's all because the person's going to go thank the Avodah Zara, because even being able to lend money to the Jewish person who's requesting it, that also is something that he's going to give hoda'ah for. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Leporan v'lefroa mehen v'chulu, let's say to pay them or to collect debts from them. In other words, again, if you're going to pay them back, that's going to be prohibited 3 days before the holiday. And let's say you're going to collect the debt from them, that's also prohibited. And the Gemara says, Bishlam v'leporan, again, it makes sense that you can't pay them. Misham d'kamaravachlu, that's a gain for them. Ela lefroa mehen, but to collect payments, miyute memaitlu, aren't you taking away from them? Why is that something they're going to give thanks about? Amar Abaya, again, Abaya says, Gezeru lefroa mehen atu leporan, there's a gezer to collect from them because then you might come to pay them back. Rava says, Kula mishum da'azulu modhu, again, it's all because he's going to thank his Avodah Zara because he was able to pay off the debt. And the Gemara says, Utrichi, now all of these various cases are needed in the Mishnah. The Itana loses veloses iman, if we just had in the Mishnah, let's say that doing business with them, mishum d'kamaravachlu v'azlu modhu, again, that's a situation of profit, he's going to go and thank the Avodah Zara. Avolishol mehen, but again, to borrow from them, to miyute kamimai, to luhu shaper dummy, there you're taking away from them, maybe that would be okay. V'itana lishol mehen, if we just had to borrow from them, mishum d'chashiva le milsa v'azlu modhu, that's something that shows a certain amount of importance. He was able to lend this object, and he goes and thanks the Avodah Zara. Avol alavos mehen, but just to borrow money from them, tzara bi'almisle, that's just something that's annoying for him, that's something that's a pain for him. Amar Tuvlo Hadri Zuze, he says to himself, the money's not going to come back. Vitana Lalavos man, and if we just had to borrow money, Mishum de Kamar Bal Korche, Mifrana, because he's going to say, against his will, he will pay me back. I'm going to lend him money. The non-Jew will say, I'm lending the Jew money, and the Jew will pay me back. V'hashtami Azul Umod, and so again, he's going to go and thank the Avodah Zara. Avoli Param Mehen, but to collect money from them, to Sulo Hadri Zuze, so there the money's not going to come back. The debt is being collected from the non-Jew, and of course he's not going to get that back. He's paying off a debt. Eimot Sara Isle, we would say that's a situation of pain for him. V'lo Azul Umod, he's not going to thank the Avodah Zara Tzricha. That's why all of these cases are necessary. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Rabbi Yehuda says, Nifroin mehen v'chulu, you are allowed to collect debts from them because that's not something they're happy about. They're not happy to pay off a debt. The Gemara says, V'lesle Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold of the concept, Afal pisha meitzer achshav, that even though it's painful right now, sameach hu la'achar zman, he is going to be happy later on. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda should also agree that paying off a debt is something to be happy about because he's happy later on when he doesn't have to pay it back. And the Gemara says, V'atanya, we learned in a brayso that Rabbi Yehuda says, he does say this concept that sameach hu la'achar zman, because Rabbi Yehuda says, Isha lo tasud b'moed mimnei shenivul hu lo, a woman is not allowed to put the lime on her face on chol hamoed because that really is something, it doesn't improve the way she looks at the time that it's on her skin, and so therefore she's not allowed to do that. Umoed Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda admits, besid sheyechol lekaflo b'moed, let's say we're talking about lime that she's able to remove on chol hamoed, so now she'll look good on chol hamoed, shetof lasa b'moed, that she could apply on chol hamoed, afal pisha mitzira even though right now it's bad for her, but she's going to be happy about it later on. And so therefore you see that he does hold of this concept of simcha li'achar zman. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Hanach lehilchas moed, leave aside the halachas of chol moed, to kulu meitzar achshav simcha li'achar zman, because that all revolves around the idea that you're doing something that might be painful right now, but it's something that's going to bring simcha later on. That's the idea of any work that you might be doing on chol moed. You're doing work right now for a benefit that's later on. And the Gemara continues, Ravina Amar Ravina says, Ovid kochavim le'inyan piron, when it comes to an idol worshiper paying back the debts, li'olam meitzar, that always is something that is he considers to be painful, he considers to be bad, and therefore there we would not apply the idea of simcha li'achar zman. And the Gemara continues, Masnis, in our Mishnah, the Lok Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. It does not follow Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, because Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha actually makes a distinction between what kind of debt is being paid back. The Tanya, we learned in a Braisa, Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says, Milva b'shtar, if it was a loan with a document, ein nifroin mehen, so that you're not allowed to collect from them. But milva al peh, but when it comes to a milva al peh, so that nifroin mehen, that you are allowed to collect, mimneshu kematzel miyadim, because then it's like you're saving it from them. Meaning to say, if you have a document, there's no reason you have to collect right before their holiday. You'll be able to collect it later on. You have a document. But if it's a milva al peh, there's no document, so you really need to get it now. If you're going to wait till later on, you might not be able to get that money, so we allow you to collect it even right before the holiday. And the Gemara continues, Yosef Rav Yosef achorei de Rabbi Abba. Rav Yosef was sitting behind Rabbi Abba. V'Yosef Rabbi Abba kami de Rav Huna. Rabbi Abba was sitting in front of Rav Huna. V'Yosef v'kaman, he was saying as follows, Hilchasa Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. The halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. Again, that we make this distinction between shtar and between milva al peh. V'Hilchasa Rabbi Yehuda, and the halacha also is like Rabbi Yehuda, which we'll quote in a moment. Hilchasa Rabbi Yeshua, the halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua Hadamar, what we just said. Rabbi Yehuda, and the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa. The Mesoras Hashas changes this to the Tanan, as we learned in a Mishnah. Hanosein semer letzeva letzvolo edom. Let's say a person gives wool to a dyer whose the purpose is to dye it red. V'tzavo shachar, then he goes ahead and he dyes it black. Or shachar, he wants to dye it black. V'tzavo edom, but then the dyer goes ahead and he dyes it red. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Zayin Amud Aleph.